Well, hey there. Welcome to Behind the Pulpit for November the 4th, 2024. It was a chilly morning, but we're so glad that you're joining us here today. It's a Monday, and it's early. We're recording at about 8:30 in the morning here on Monday, November 4th. We're glad you're joining us. Pastor Dave, this is your prime time. How are you feeling right now?
Hey, Bob. I've been up since about 4, doing some work, and ready to roll, ready for lunch
Let's
soon.
say that again. 4 o'clock, he was just like, I got to get up.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think the clock's kind of messed me up a little bit now.
Well, you know what?
I usually can get to 5, but...
Well, it was technically 5. We're still kind of in the falling back and whatever,
right.
so...
It's not my favorite thing to have it be dark at like 5 p.m. now, so how you doing?
I know,
with
but
that?
it is light early in the morning, so maybe
That
that's
helps.
why the sun was coming in at 4 and waking you up, right?
I mean, Saturday the sun rose at 7:30. Sunday the sun rose at 6:30.
There you go. It's starting to get...
It's fine with
light.
me.
4 o'clock, man.
I went to the gym this morning and it was light. Normally I'm driving and I've been driving in the
Hey,
dark.
got your workout in already.
Yeah,
Wow.
I did.
Good for you.
I'm ready to go.
Swimming
All right.
some laps today.
So Monday at the YMCA is the best day for swimming. Apparently that's the day nobody wants to swim, so
Okay.
I can just get in there.
Yeah.
The other days it's a little tenuous. So I usually I try to do that for like cardio, and then I'll go over and do weights. Say hi to some NBC people over there. I saw
Yeah.
Ricardo there this morning.
What's up, Ricardo?
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's some training that you needed to be able to swim, like for good cardio? Because I always feel like I'm struggling, and I don't know. Am I out of breath because I'm working hard in terms of aerobic activity, or am I out of breath because my breathing isn't exactly, the rhythm isn't exactly right? So I don't have any formal training for swimming, but do you struggle with that?
I don't either, but I what I do like is the fact you're using your whole body, and it's typically easier on the joints than if you're going and running.
Yeah.
I do feel like after I've been doing it for a few months, I've kind of got the breathing pattern down a little bit more. So I'm able to do more laps.
So it took a few months to get that.
At the beginning, I'm out of breath. I need a break, and now I can go for a lot more laps.
Right.
Because I got the breathing is an important thing. Yeah.
Are you like a freestyle the whole time, or do you do other?
I usually do
strokes?
freestyle, and then I'll do backstroke,
Back.
to kind of, because I do like the fly like this, because I'm working my,
You can breathe freely with the backstroke.
and that's, sometimes I do that if I need to get some
Right.
breath in, yeah.
right.
But I'm trying to work it up where I can do freestyle for more laps, and then once I start to get tired, then I'll start to do that so I can get my breathing in a little bit of a break.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man. Good work.
But I've never been a long distance. I'm more of a sprint, so I kind of, I don't know, I kind of like this. I've started to get into it.
Yeah.
Very dangerous
Yeah.
over short distances.
All right, so Pastor Dave, it's Monday, November 4th, and I don't know if you've heard, but something's happening tomorrow. Have you heard about this? Tomorrow is Election Day, and as I heard somebody say this morning, our long national nightmare will soon be over, although who knows, maybe it'll drag on for another month.
The campaign season is extending, too. Like, it used to start, the primaries used to start maybe 18 months out, but now it's like, well, the day after election, let's figure out.
You really get maybe a year, maybe 18 months to 2 years before they start campaigning for the next
2028.
presidential cycle. Yep. But yeah, and the other thing that's crazy, and I heard people saying about this, and this I think is not good for the elections, is that you got a place like Florida, which is the third or fourth largest state, that reports their results in 3 hours, and you have these other smaller states that just drag things out. Like, they're already saying, we might not know. We're definitely not going to know on election night. Maybe we'll know by Saturday, which I just don't think is, it raises all these questions. Why is it taking so long to count votes, and then things just keep rolling in? So
Yeah.
that's not good. So
I remember the 2000 thing, and that
I
was
do.
like a month for Gore to concede that, and that was, it was full of anxiety for the whole month of November, and it would be nice just to have like an answer on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning.
yeah, and I do have concerns. I mean, either way, I mean, people are saying this is the closest election in, I don't know if it's been in history, but certainly in modern history. It is, if the polls turn out to be correct, it's razor thin. Not just nationally. I saw a poll nationally. It's 49-49.
Yeah.
And then even in the swing states, it's closer. And you got these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 states that are basically going to decide the Electoral College.
The trouble with this is, I think right now we're so polarized that half of America is going to be, not just disappointed, but deeply disturbed and distressed, right? So there could be a real reaction. I don't know about you. When I was growing up, like, we barely knew what everybody thought about their politics. You know, like maybe a couple people in the neighborhood had some signs, but other than that, I didn't know, like, who people voted for. Even in my own extended family, like, we just didn't make a big deal of this.
I know.
But now with social media and how everybody just kind of voices their opinions about everything, it seems like an opportunity to have constant conflict and constant opinions. And so that creates this sort of polarization that we're experiencing as a country. So it used to be after the election, there would be a concession, and then whoever was the newly elected president would unite the country, and they would be president of the red states and the blue states and the United States of America. And it just seems like the civil discourse has deteriorated in such a way that it's hard to imagine either one of these candidates actually uniting the country. So that's troubling to think about either party succeeding. Yeah,
and it seems like people will say that. They'll give lip service to that either in speeches or on the campaign trail, but when they actually come in and govern, they don't govern like that. And that's starting to pull people apart. Yeah. I think part of it is at least, and I heard maybe a campaign ad or something like, I forget where I heard it, but they basically said our issue is not political, it's spiritual. And I do think that one of the reasons politics has become such a important thing for people is that there is a defocus on religion, and specifically we would say Christian worldview. And so if people are not finding their purpose and their fulfillment in Christ, they're going to find it someplace else. And so politics is filling that void. It's almost become some sort of secular religion in the way that people adhere to certain things that seem like creeds, and they're putting all their eggs in that basket. And so the ante has been upped, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So anyway, our encouragement would be, though, go and vote. Tomorrow is November 4th, so cast your ballot, and hopefully on Wednesday or Thursday we'll know what the results are.
Have you voted?
I did. I voted last week. Actually, here in New Jersey, District 7. Are you in District 7? With Tom Keene and so that's a pretty tight race, and that's going to maybe play a part in deciding who controls the House. So here in New Jersey, that's actually the one thing that really is going to matter quite a bit.
Actually, the local elections will probably be much more consequential to our lives immediately. But I voted too. I think I voted on Friday. I was surprised at how long the line was for early voting. I was like, huh. I mean, I was in and out of there in 20 minutes, but it was like, oh, there's a lot of people here on a random Friday afternoon to cast their ballot.
I went on Wednesday around noon during lunch, and I got in and out pretty quickly, but yesterday I drove by, and that line was like, it was a long line.
Yeah.
So people were going, because I think yesterday was the last day to vote early here in Berners Township.
Yeah.
Now you got to go on Election Day.
Yeah, there was nothing Monday. So I kind of shut it down.
Anyway.
Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., if you haven't cast your ballot, please do so. We live in a country where we can freely vote, and we would encourage you to exercise your civil duty.
Did you vote yet, Tim?
No, I'm a big vote on the day guy.
All right.
I like the idea of coming in and voting on Election Day. I don't know.
There you go.
I do too, although my Tuesday's busy, so I figured I would get it out of the way.
Right.
All right, so that is that's the beginning here. Now let's move on to our In the News segment.
Just think next week we may have an answer to this question.
We might.
Special Behind the Pulpit next week.
Election edition with the aftermath. Hopefully it won't be a bloodbath as you were talking about yesterday. Indeed.
Do you remember the whole Not My President movement in 2016?
Yep.
I have a feeling that may have a resurgence.
I think so, and probably either way.
Yeah.
So,
in the news.
All right. So that was already kind of a news, but actually there's another news story that I wanted to bring up. I was texting Tim and Dave about this over the weekend. This news story has been breaking the internet, and I will just come to the headline. Peanut the Squirrel set X on fire as tributes and memes flood the zone. Now, you might ask yourself, if you're not following this, who is Peanut the Squirrel? Well, apparently, Peanut was an Instagram sensation. These guys, this family up in New York, this couple, found this wild squirrel and took it in and befriended it. I forget the whole story about how that happened. So They had Peanut the squirrel, and they had the raccoon, and they started this rescue, like wildlife rescue business, and they named it after Peanut. So everybody was following these videos of Peanut doing tricks inside with this guy, Mark and Daniela Longo. Those are the two people. And they also took in a raccoon named Fred. So here's how the story goes. New York State officials poked a virtual hornet's nest when they confiscated and euthanized internet sensation Peanut the squirrel and a raccoon named Fred that was also rescued and kept as a pet. Mark and Daniela, Peanut's owners, told TMZ that state officials raided their homes as if they were drug dealers and had taken both the squirrel and the raccoon, which they had rescued and kept in their home, and euthanized them. So I don't know if you guys were following this at all, but I just started to see Elon Musk tweeting about this, Xing about this, whatever you call it. I saw memes out there, justice for Peanut, hashtags were going out there. And I said, what is going on here? People were trying to get Donald Trump to tweet about it. So it was pretty crazy. And I was trying to understand why in the world they did this. And apparently the only thing I could find was that they were concerned these animals had rabies after they had been posting about this for like 6 or 7 years. So it seems a bit odd and fishy. But people are not happy about Peanut's death.
Yeah.
Were you following this, Pastor Dave?
I saw a little thing about it. I didn't really follow deeply. I guess from a public health standpoint, certain animals you're allowed to have as pets, certain animals you're not. And it depends on what state you live in. So this is why state elections matter, right? So this is the kind of thing that's decided not on a federal level, but every state's different. I don't know about New York. I don't know about New Jersey. I do have a lot of squirrels in my yard. I have some bats in my attic that I had to get rid of. And
you would be happy to euthanize the bats, wouldn't you?
So, you know what's interesting is like, no, they wouldn't allow you to harm the bats because bats are protected species in New Jersey. But bats can be a major vector for transmission of disease as well. And so it was kind of like are we concerned about this spread of disease, or are we concerned about the fact that these are endangered species? And the endangered species thing wins out with the bats. You can't kill them, so they can leave. They can go somewhere else, but you can't like actually trap them or harm them. So
interesting.
Yeah, but I guess bats like actually are good for to keep around. They take care of a lot of the bugs in your yard and that kind of thing at night. So it's good to have them. I just didn't want them in my attic. As far as squirrels, I don't know what the laws are about that. I have some rabbits living under my shed. I don't know if I'm allowed to like bring them inside and like make them my pets or not. But I guess certain animals you're allowed to do that. Certain animals you're not. And so this. Well, we went to some neighbors. I think complained about this.
We went to the Camden Aquarium back in August when I was on vacation, and they had this experience where you could go and you could basically see the penguins. And when I took my daughter in there, they told us, "Oh, you can let them touch you, but you can't touch them because they're also a protected species. These penguins in New Jersey."
Yeah.
So I don't know who gets to decide who's protected and who's not, but New Jersey's got a lot of protected animals.
The higher ups in the I don't know, the administration.
But apparently the squirrels and the raccoons are not protected up in New York.
Can we just talk about how dangerous it is to take out the trash at Millington Baptist Church? So I was here and I encountered
Fred's
a raccoon.
brother's out there. Yes.
Yeah. It was night, okay, and I had some stuff, and Felicity was with me. Her and I had a moment. A lot of adrenaline was released. Okay, so you pop the fence open here at the church, and then you pop. Tim, have you had this experience? I mean,
with or without the raccoon,
you take your life in your hands. Well,
you never know if the raccoon's going to pop out of the
answer is yes to both.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, your hands are always kind of full with whatever you're, because you got like the one hand thing with the lid, and then you got some stuff in your other hand to. So you don't really have a hand to protect your face or anything from these, and the claws, man, right, and the beady eyes. So I lift the lid, and I hear some scurrying. I'm like, oh man, here it goes. And then two of them like come up to the, they're ready to pounce on me, man. I'm like, so I threw my trash in there, and Felicity.
I know. I've had that experience. They like to get in my backyard too, so I gotta make sure my trash is nowhere where they can get it,
man.
Yeah, I know that they're just trying to eat, but I feel like I don't know. I don't
Well,
want to
here,
use
look.
the
Here's one of the
dumpster.
pictures. Here's a raccoon drinking a Dunkin' Donuts latte right here. Maybe that's what you need to do to befriend him.
I guess that's
The
one way
raccoon.
to go.
He's drinking the latte. There you go.
You know when they really love it here? When we have summer connections and there's a lot of like food garbage
I'm
that
sure
goes
they
into
do.
the dumpster. Raccoons are like, hey, it's summer connections.
Yeah. Well, maybe to wrap this up, one thing I will say is there seems to be sort of this movement, and there was a number of years ago, there was a big controversy over Harambe the gorilla in the zoo. I think it was the Cincinnati Zoo, where a child fell in, and they wound up putting down Harambe because he likely would have killed the child, and this was a big deal on the internet. And the problem with that is that we're starting to equate animals with humans, like which life is more important. And people are trying to do that with this thing. I don't think it's the same thing here, but still, that mindset is out there. And we do believe from a Christian worldview that God created human beings special in His image. That's not something that the animals have. He's given us dominion over creation, and so we should be stewarding our role well. But still, as far as value, human life has more value than animal life. So that's something to think about in the midst of this kind of crazy story as it breaks the internet. I haven't seen anybody tweeting about that piece. No Genesis 1:26 here yet, but maybe it's coming.
I was laughing at Nate Bargatze, who was talking about how when we kill and eat animals, sometimes we have a different name for the food that the animal is than the animal, right? So instead of saying we're going to eat cow, we say we're going to eat beef. Instead of saying we're going to eat pig, we eat pork. And then he's
Interesting.
like, how about chicken? No, that's the same. We just call it chicken.
We're not going to eat deer. Not going to eat deer. We're going to eat venison.
Right? Yeah.
Mutton.
It's like a mental trick that we use to
Lamb is the same.
Yeah, some are the same, like
You got
turkey.
lamb, but you say lamb chops. Well, is that different? Is it? Do we just
Chopping
take the
up the
chops?
lamb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chicken, we just call it chicken, right? So anyway,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know
guess.
who decides these things, but
Fowl. You can call it fowl.
yeah. The game hen.
There you go. All right. So that's what's happening in the news. Vote and start tweeting about Peanut the Squirrel. All right. Next segment we're going to move on to is our book war segment. And we started something a little new last week.
It's a lot of pressure.
We weren't just recommending a book and going back and forth. We decided for the foreseeable future, we will each recommend a book. And our goal is to get Tim to buy one of the books that we recommend. So we're trying to pick books now, hoping that Tim will say, I'd like to buy that book. And if he actually does buy it, I'd like a commission on it because I did a good job selling it. So, Pastor Dave, do you want to go first? Do you want to do the coin toss? Do you want to recommend first or me? And then we'll do the
Pastor
deliberation.
Dave went first last week, so I think Pastor Bob goes first this
There you
week.
go.
Okay, all right. So I had, as you can imagine, I had a couple I had to decide between, and the book that I thought about first, maybe the one that Tim would have definitely chosen, but I opted to go a different direction because I thought this was a good book for a season that we're in right now.
I respect that.
So this is a book by Gavin Ortland, and the title is Finding the Right Hills to Die On. And his subtitle is The Case for Theological Triage. So basically what he does is he goes through and he lists out, and we did this on a podcast a couple months ago, on how do you decide what are first tier, second tier, and third tier issues. And what are issues that should divide us? What are issues that we can just disagree upon? So he goes through those, and the first tier issues are things like what is the gospel, justification by faith. Second tier are things like women in ministry, egalitarian, complementarian, and third tier are things like eschatological issues that it's good to have an opinion, but they shouldn't divide us. And he does a good job of building a case for how we can have unity and how we can discern through these things. So that's a good book if you're interested in that topic, and that'll be my recommendation for today.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I was just reading a Moeller article about theological triage, and of course, it's a term taken from the medical community.
Indeed.
If you go to the emergency room, they're going to triage how serious your problem is, and they sort the patients. So a lot of people use the emergency room like it's like they don't understand. So they just come there for like no reason, and things they should probably go somewhere else. And so the doctors have to like sort, okay, this guy's about to die and we're going to put him first in line. And then this guy this is a small item that he can wait in the waiting room for hours and hours and hours. So they have to like decide who's going to get the priority treatment, right? And I think theology is like that. So, okay, if somebody's denying Jesus, let's make that a key point of division here. If somebody has a particular issue on the timing of the rapture, well, that's going to be way down the line. You're going to be in the waiting room. That's not like a front burner crisis issue that we need to deal with. It's like outside of orthodoxy. So I think it's important. I haven't read Ortland's book, but that looks like a good recommendation.
It's a good read.
I may even actually have to get that just to solve the book war right here.
Whoa.
Whoa! I get both of you to buy it, then I guess I get... You guys can buy me lunch, I think, if that's the case.
Yeah. You won. All right, so
you're going to forfeit?
Follow. I'll try. Okay, so this book, it used to be the best-selling book of all time, except for the Bible. For many years, The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. He was a Puritan writer and author and pastor in Bedford, England, and he was preaching the gospel outside of the authorized Church of England, and he was imprisoned for that for like a dozen years. And during that time, there was multiple imprisonments, but during one of his imprisonments, he actually wrote this allegory called Pilgrim's Progress, and it's basically an analogy for living the Christian life. So it's about this guy, Christian. He finds out from God's good book that he's living in a city marked for destruction, and he's looking for an answer to that. He runs into an evangelist who shares with him the gospel. He drops his burden of sin, and then the rest of the book is his journey of sanctification, where he has to run into all kinds of snares and snags and dungeons and characters, and it's a really fascinating allegory. It's a very rich allegory. If you're not a reader, I know this is the book war, but there is a couple different film renditions of this.
Oh, he's throwing in a twist here.
The most recent one was a 2019 version of Pilgrim's Progress that you can actually just watch on YouTube, I think. So this is worth your time to just digest the characters and the plot line of the great Pilgrim's Progress. And I think you'll enjoy that.
Is this acceptable that he recommended a book and a movie?
I think I just broke the rules.
Well,
goodness,
I'm not
I don't
taking
know.
the movie into my recommendation here.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, so I have my verdict.
All right. Well,
Wow,
you didn't even
that was
need to
a fast-
deliberate. You already
yeah.
decided.
I've already decided. So a little bit of background. Way back at the beginning of the Fresh Wave podcast, we had an episode with Christina and Annabelle, and they spent a lot of the episode talking about the Pilgrim's Progress. And so I was like, I kind of want to read that book. And I forgot about it, and I never got it. And then yesterday during the sermon, I was sitting next to my wife during the 10:45, and I was like, I want to read that book. And she's like, you should put it in your Amazon cart right now and send a screenshot to Pastor Dave saying that you took one of his book recommendations.
Yes.
So I put it in my Amazon
he who finds
cart.
a wife finds a good thing.
I put it in my Amazon cart before you even recommended the book, Pastor
Wow.
Dave.
I feel like this is like you were giving him the questions ahead of time. I don't
So
think that's fair.
considering that I had already
nefarious.
Election interference.
I had already put the book that you recommended in my cart, I have to go with Pastor Dave here.
Yeah. Well, thanks,
All
Tim.
right. Well,
You're
okay.
welcome.
I guess we're at 1-1. I get one
You're
last
all
week.
tied
you
up
won this
here.
week.
But Pastor Bob, I probably that's a great. I have to say that book does sound really interesting.
Close runner-up.
But it's just the circumstances here are too great.
Well, here's the conundrum. So you said you buy that, but Dave said he'd buy my book. So is it a tie or does Dave win?
You guys can sort that out after the show.
Scoreboard right here.
We should get that back there.
Or scoreboard.
All right. Thus ends
By
the
the
book
way,
war.
I didn't want to misspeak about the book in my sermon because it used to be the best-selling book, and so I actually looked up: is this still the best-selling? It's not. Harry Potter has sold like 500 million books, but that's a series,
Wow.
so it's not just one book, right? So that's for the whole series. But there's a lot of other books that have surpassed The Pilgrim's Progress now, so that's kind of an old stat. But the Bible was still at the
but
top.
it used to be.
The Bible was at 5 billion.
As it
5
should be.
billion.
There
The
you go.
best-selling
Read the Bible
book of all
before
time.
Pilgrim's Progress.
Yeah.
So, and if you want to be British, you say the Pilgrim's Progress, not the progress. Progress.
The progress of the pilgrim.
There you go. We are all pilgrims. All right, there goes the book war. That's for today. Stay tuned for next week, and we'll see who wins. All right, next on the agenda here for today is the. We have a question today, right?
Oh yeah.
All right, bring us the question.
So first question that we've had in a while. So
Come
listeners,
on, people, ask questions.
ask the questions. We answer them.
Maybe we're answering the questions preemptively. They don't even need to ask them.
Just like the book war. Your sermons are so good that the questions are answered. Okay, so here is our question for today. Pastor Dave has us bow our heads and pray. I do that with my eyes closed to exclude any distractions and believing I am with the all at the heavenly altar of God. Is the benediction a prayer, eyes closed, or a blessing, eyes open? Jesus prayed all different ways, even looking up to heaven. Is there a statement in NBC for prayer behavior or only to follow the pastor's instructions? When in doubt, close one's eyes.
Well, that's an interesting question. Good question. We don't have a statement on prayer to answer the first part. The second part, and I'll start here, Dave. You can feel like you can add in here. The benediction can be a prayer at the end, but technically the word benediction means blessing. So typically people will offer a blessing, raise their hands. There's a number of benedictions in Scripture themselves. Oftentimes, if I'm doing it, I'm finding one of those benedictions. One of my favorites, and probably one of the most famous, is at the end of Jude 24 and 25. Actually, yesterday I did one out of Hebrews, the end of Hebrews, for the second service anyway. So I would say the benediction, at least in my mind, is something that we're looking up to receive, unless it's a prayer that we're actually offering. But I guess we don't always give instructions on that, so this is a really good clarifying question. What would you say, Pastor Dave?
The gestures and postures of prayer have wonderful diversity in the Bible and throughout church history. I think in terms of theological triage, we are way down the line of importance in terms of what's appropriate and not. There's a lot of different options in the Bible. We see people bowing down, standing, sitting, kneeling on their face, on their bed at night praying. We see people on the mountain. We see people out in boats praying. We see people in church praying, the synagogue praying. All kinds of times, multiple times a day, at night, in the morning, when it's late, very late. So I don't think we want to say hard and fast, this is how you pray. So a lot of people pray with their eyes open. A lot of people pray with their eyes closed. A lot of people pray with their hands folded like this or their hands folded like this. I believe the hand gesture does come from sort of a gesture from like medieval times that was a symbol of some. I have to look this up, but there was an origin to this, and I can't remember what it was.
Praying like this.
Yeah, but it wasn't from a theological origin. There was a different, like a superior and an inferior type of thing. I'll look that up and get back to you there.
A gesture of submission, maybe.
I think it was, but I don't want to misspeak on YouTube. So yeah, so I think.
We might get a misinformation ban,
right?
If you're
let's talk about like what is a benediction. So at the beginning of the Bible in the Pentateuch, Moses gave some very explicit instructions to Aaron and the high priest to offer this famous benediction from Numbers chapter 6. Bob and I were just with Tim Mackey last week, and he did it in Hebrew, which was wonderful. And it's, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you, be gracious to you, and may the Lord give you his peace. That's a famous benediction. Bene means good, and then dictus, I think, just means like speech or words, right? So good speech or good words. Receive these good words from the Lord. And that's an opportunity, I think, to be in more of a receptive posture. And so I see people a lot of times palms up in sort of a receiving posture and head up, eyes open. Tim, I think you received some instruction when you were at a church. What was the
So I Redeemer Presbyterian in New York City, where Tim Keller used to preach. I went there a few times when I was in college, and they used to always say, "Lift your head to receive the benediction." So I have held on to that, and that's typically my posture during the benediction.
I like that. Yeah. So that's what I would encourage. And but if you feel more comfortable bowing your heads and closing your eyes, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think it's okay to lift your head and receive that benediction. I typically will use the Numbers 6 one. Do you have some favorite benedictions that you like go to if you were put on the spot and they said, "Hey, Pastor Bob, can you offer the benediction?"
Yeah, the Jude
like
24.
The Jude one?
I did one out of Revelation a couple weeks ago, and it really fired me up.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I'll pick pieces of scripture that are just not typically benedictions, but the ones that are more categorized as benedictions, the Jude one is probably my favorite.
Yeah, there's a really wonderful one from Hebrews.
But the Numbers one, of course,
used
is
yesterday.
very famous. Yeah.
Hebrews
Hebrew
13.
End of Hebrews 13 is also a benediction.
The great shepherd of the sheep, that
Yep.
one.
Yep.
There's one that when I was at Capitol Hill Baptist Church, I realized they always do this benediction every week. So we had the Welches were here that were part of the Capitol Hill, and they would, I think, affirm this. And that one's from 2 Corinthians, which is Trinitarian. The end of 2 Corinthians is, may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, may the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all.
Yeah.
Amen. So that was another common benediction. There's
Yep.
other ones. Ephesians 3, now to him who's able to do
Yep,
exceedingly
that one too.
abundantly. So there's some great ones in the Bible, but I think freedom there in terms of your posture and what you're comfortable receiving in that moment. So hopefully that's helpful. But I think it's good for us once in a while to explain liturgy. People don't always intuitively know what to do in church services.
Yeah.
So
Maybe that's something we should add in.
that's a good
add
reminder.
An explanation.
Hey, this is what this is. It's
Yeah.
a benediction. What does that mean? Well, bene means good, and
Yeah.
dictus means word, and this is an
That's good.
opportunity for you to receive a good word. Lift up your heads, Tim, and receive the benediction from the
I lift my eyes
It's
up
a good
to the
question.
hills.
Hey, thank you, John,
Yeah.
for asking that. And we would just continue to encourage you guys to ask your questions. We'd love to hear from you.
Good. Thank you very much. All right. We are moving on to the next segment, which is going to be a dovetail into the sermon. So, Pastor Dave, we're in our chart citing segment. And you told me today you don't have a specific chart, which I was very disappointed at. So, I think you did have a chart in your sermon.
I overdid it last
Why
week.
don't you... you did take us deep into the recesses of that chart.
I'm sorry
By
about
the way,
that, guys.
I sent Dave a couple charts this week. I'm going to see if he uses it in his Sunday school lesson. So if you're watching and you're in his class, look out.
How many people zoned out during the chart section last week? I want to know.
I don't know.
How
Some
many
people might be really interested.
Started scrolling.
Put it in the comments.
The depravity factor. Here comes a chart.
Well, there is one chart I use for the sermon, so I'll just review that one. And
Why don't you do that and then give us the overview of what you talked about?
Okay, so Tim, if you could throw that up there. This is like a horizontal chart of the book of Revelation. It has 22 chapters. Bob said it looks like a ruler, which it kind of does. And
Yeah. Well, without the little things you put in there,
Yeah.
little subsets.
right. And so there's 3 sets of judgments in the book of Revelation.
I was wondering what are we measuring, but then these came in,
Right.
so it was
Yeah.
clear.
We're not measuring the temple. That's in chapter 11. So there's seals, trumpets, and bowls. There's 7 of each. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls. And then there's this interlude in the middle between chapters 10 and 15 that we're in the middle of right now. And so chapter 14:1 to 15:4 was a contrast to your section last week. And so I'll talk about that now. There's our chart. Thank you, Tim. So chapter 13 describes these beasts, and then chapter 14 describes the lamb. Chapter 13 describes people who receive the mark of the beast, and then chapter 14 describes people receiving the mark of God the Father on their foreheads. Kind of a Shema type of
Right.
symbol there. Write these things on your heads and carry them around and on your doorposts and stuff. And so we have like a contrast. I think there's the enemy, the unholy trinity, and then there's the Lamb and his people, 144,000 people. The way I organized it was very literary. There was a textual sort of chiasm there, which is an A, B, C, B, A format with a central point about a blessing. And we saw the people of God standing and then singing, and then we saw these 3 angels warning, and then these other 3 angels harvesting, and then right in the middle there's this blessing from the Spirit of God about those who die in the Lord from now on, receiving a blessing from God, and then the Spirit says they are blessed indeed, which is a little counterintuitive to think about death being a source of blessing, but yet here in Revelation we are given that promise, which is an amazing thing to hold on to. And I hope if you forgot everything else about yesterday's sermon, you did remember that incredible blessing that was there for you in Revelation 14, verses 12 and 13, because that is something to hold on to, especially during the most difficult times of our life. So the message was about the glory of God and the grapes of wrath, Bob. It was a tough passage. It was a heavy passage. Maybe not as heavy as the one that's coming up for
Well,
next
no,
week,
but you did a good job of setting up. We're going to be talking.
The tone there
We're going to
was-
go a little more in depth on God's justice and wrath this coming week as we look at the bowl judgments. But the good thing about the bowl judgments after that, it ends with, "It is finished. It is finished. God's justice will be complete." And then we're finally here in the next couple of weeks going to start getting to some hopeful, happy sections of Revelation again when Jesus comes back. As we begin.
There's some good news in Revelation. We just are in the interlude right now.
6 to 16 is a lot of. I mean, you were talking about. Let's just get the elephant out of the way up front here. We had some pretty interesting things of blood going up to the horse's bridle, and we had just a lot of sulfur and fire, and it was pretty rough.
It's kind of hard not to be a fire and brimstone preacher when fire and brimstone's literally in your
text,
passage, right? So
we had sickles, we had a lot of those crazy things. So maybe could you talk a little bit about these? Well, there was a couple interpretive things. So you talked a little bit about the 144,000. What was your take on that? So that's an interesting number because it comes up in chapter 7 and then it reappears here in chapter 14. How did you take that? What you're wrestling with? Who are these 144,000?
I was trained as a futurist, so I always thought these were the saved Jews in the tribulation period in the future. But I've recently been intrigued by, leaning towards this whole preterist mindset that these are the Jews that accepted Christ in the first century. They're the first fruits who were spared the wrath of God that came upon Israel and came upon Jerusalem. And so these are the 12 tribes that God has elected as part of his people. I don't necessarily think that theological triage-wise that's a first-tier issue. We can agree to disagree, but that's what I'm currently thinking about there. So,
and what was their significance in chapter 14 here, do you think, following chapter 13?
Well, the significance I drew out was that they're still there, 100% of them. So, we've been through a lot. We've been through, we went through all the seals and all the trumpets and the dragon and the couple of beasts, and yet all of God's people remain faithful. So I think that that's a really good encouragement that, there's verses in the Gospels that says Jesus holds us in the palm of his hands, and that those who he justifies, he glorifies in Romans chapter 8, or, Jesus says, all the ones that the Father has given me, I have kept, not one of them has perished. So I think that that's a good encouragement that God's people will endure. There's a great song called "He Will Hold Me Fast" by the Gettys, and I think that that's true. God will hold us fast, and here we are, still standing, 144,000.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so my next question here, we have the angels flying overhead, telling us to fear God, worship him, and then we get into Babylon. So you mentioned this is the first time Babylon is brought up in Revelation, but Babylon's going to play a big role in chapter 17 and 18.
Yes.
So who is Babylon?
So, that's a great question. And sometimes what Revelation does is it introduces a word or a topic before it's fully explained it. Mm-hmm. You may remember it did this with the beast. So before your passage about the beast, it mentioned the beast earlier. And we're like, well, who's the beast? Well, we're going to get there in chapter 13. Same thing with Babylon. Oh, Babylon's fallen. Wait, who's Babylon? We haven't really even got to that. And that's not going to be really explained until chapters 17 and 18. So have you ever heard of the word cipher?
I have.
Tim, is that like should I define that?
I, of course, have. I've seen National Treasure a lot of times.
Okay. So. Thank you. So I think Babylon is a cipher. I think it's a code word. I think it's a symbol. I don't think we're literally talking about the city in Iraq. Although there are some futurists that say that's what it's talking about. There's a literal city. Like, for example, Charlie Dyer had a famous book when Saddam Hussein was in power. This is like prior to the Gulf War. So Saddam Hussein thought of himself as sort of like the revitalization of the spirit of Nebuchadnezzar. He thought of himself as Nebuchadnezzar II. And so he was rebuilding this ancient culture, and there was pictures of him that were made to look like Nebuchadnezzar. And back then, Charlie Dyer wrote a book about Babylon that thought that this would be like a literal rebuilding of the old Babylon. I don't think Babylon's being used in a literal sense like that in Revelation. I think it's more figurative. I think it's a cipher. And so that might be true. There might be a future Babylon. I don't mean to say that view is like totally untenable, but that's not really where I lean. So I think it's like a code, and there's a couple different interpretive options in terms of what does the code stand for. And this is really tricky, and I will unpack this further in chapters 17 and 18. But it goes all the way back to Genesis 11, where they built the Tower of Babel, a city that was not built on God, that was built on man, and meant to make a name for ourselves. And then, of course, Babylon was a great enemy of the people of God that took the people of God in 586 BC into captivity. And we went into the Babylonian exile. They were a larger-than-life enemy that the people of God had to face and be captured by. They were God's instrument of judgment and justice upon the people of God. And then they were conquered eventually by the Persians, and then the Grecian Empire, then the Roman Empire. And then sometimes in the New Testament, it looks like Babylon is being used to describe Rome. So Peter is writing a letter, and at the end of is it 1st or 2nd Peter, where at the end of the letter he says, "Those in Babylon greet you." It's like, what? Where's Peter? And most people think Peter was imprisoned in Rome. So it looks like Peter's using it to describe Rome, but it may not always describe Rome. It may just be more of a generic description of any governmental system that sets itself up against God and is built on the principles of humankind apart from the sound theology. So it could be that. I will say, I'll just mention that there's a view that Babylon in the book of Revelation is the code word for the city of Jerusalem. And so the preterists take that view, that Babylon is the great city. It's called the great city, which Jerusalem is called the great city in chapter 11. And there's no mistake in chapter 11. It's talking about the great city where the Lord Jesus was crucified.
So the preterists would take it as saying basically the judgment is coming on that great city. Jerusalem has become Babylon, basically.
Right.
Is that
ironically
how you would take it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in that way, like preterists say, Jerusalem is called 3 different ciphers in Revelation. It's called Babylon. It's also called Sodom, and it's also called Egypt. And all of those would be sort of an ironic way of detestably referring to Jerusalem as that which was once chosen as the people of God and now has become the antithesis. Now they've become the enemies of God. That's a view I'm going to try to unpack in a couple weeks when we get to Babylon, but there's a lot of people who may disagree with that. There's plenty of views on Babylon, but we'll get there.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking here at the beginning of chapter 7 and noticing you got some more colorful language here at the beginning of chapter 17.
It's not going to be...
Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters. The sexual immorality was very interesting because that comes up here. And you were talking about that being a symbol for idolatry, right?
Yeah.
That's what you said?
Yeah, false worship.
Right, and then, of course, 17:4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, and she's sitting on the scarlet beast, blasphemous name, 7 heads. What's interesting about Revelation is some of these images that are repeated over and over again. They keep coming back up. The 7 heads, the 10 horns, the woman, and then sometimes they don't always mean the same thing. So, it's...
I don't want to steal my own thunder here, but that woman and the colors and the stuff that she's wearing is exactly the same colors that the priestly garments were in the city of Jerusalem.
Interesting.
So I'm just going to put that out there, saying something to consider.
All right. Well, we're going to find out in a couple weeks after we experience the bowl judgments.
Yeah.
So
very good.
But then after that, we get to chapter 19, and Jesus comes back and puts an end to it all. So it is Christmas.
The white horse,
and that actually is going to be the first week of Advent. So we can just start saying, Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
Jesus is coming.
It's perfect.
Joy
because,
to the world.
Many people don't realize this, but Advent is not really primarily about the first coming of Jesus and Christmas.
Sure.
Christmas is the climax of Advent. Advent means coming, and in church history, it was a celebration of the second coming, and it's all about preparing ourselves for his coming again. So in this year, we're really going to go headlong into that whole concept because we're talking about the second coming of Christ and all that will bring. So Yeah.
Yeah, well, very cool. All right, so other things about this this message you had. What did you do with the blood? Let's just talk about the blood for a second, and then I'll ask you some applicational questions here. So the blood, you were saying we're trying to figure out how much blood and the river of blood, and billions of people would have to die and bleed out in order for us to have the river that large. What's going on with the blood?
Right. Well, he says that the blood was 1,600 stadia and up to the horse's bridle, which was about, 4 feet deep. Humankind, we have about 5 or 6 quarts of blood inside of our bodies. So for a river to form 4 feet deep, 1,600 stadia, which is like 200 miles long, that's a lot of blood. We're talking about billions of people that would be collectively pooling up and creating this blood river. That might be true in a literal sense. Other interpreters take that as symbolic, picturesque, impressionistic ways to describe the massive deterioration and devastation of war. So the preterists talk about that. And there is a bunch of quotations in the intertestamental literature that describe this sort of river of blood language. It is not unique to the book of Revelation whatsoever. There's tons of examples about this. Gentry's book, Divorce of Israel, listed at least like a dozen times where this whole river of blood imagery was being used to describe judgment, usually through the hands of warfare. So I think that that's probably what's going on there. I don't think we don't need to be overly literal. And I did mention 1,600 was the exact size of ancient Palestine. So something to consider. And Josephus does mention that the streets of Jerusalem did run red with blood. So I think that's important. I did want to mention the grapes of wrath thing. So
bring it up.
It was part of my sermon title, and I don't
John
know that
Steinbeck
I ever
will be very happy.
explain that. So I loved Steinbeck. The way that his ability to describe things in the English language was, whoa. That should have been my book recommendation for this week, although it's not a Christian book or a theological book. I think that Steinbeck was just a really gifted writer. So I read The Grapes of Wrath. I loved The Grapes of Wrath. It was one of my favorite books. I didn't have to read it in high school, but I just read it on my own because I liked his stuff. We had to read Of Mice and Men. I think we read the Pearl, the Great Pearl, but we never read Grapes of Wrath. I'm like, I got to read this. So I did. It was so
It's
good.
about the Dust Bowl, man.
Yeah. So it's about the Great Depression. And then it got me thinking, like, why the heck did this guy title the book Grapes of Wrath? And then to understand that, I think you have to understand there's a famous hymn. Sometimes it's even in the hymn book. We don't really sing it here. It's the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And so that hymn, mine eyes have seen the coming of the glory of the Lord. That one. A lot
He's
of times
trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored.
Very good, Bob.
Yeah?
So
I sang it, man. I know it.
We'll have to request this, Tim. See if John Bonaventura wants to do this one on July 4th or something.
His
So
terrible swift sword, his truth is marching
Right.
on.
I was at a funeral one time, and this was the person's, this was their choice of music. It was pretty
He is
cool.
sounding forth the
cool.
trumpet that shall never call retreat.
Right.
There you go, second coming.
Right. So what's going on with that hymn, the battle hymn, is it was written during the Civil War. And the writer saw the northern armies of America as God's hand of judgment upon the oppressors of the South. And so they crafted this hymn using language from Revelation, like the Grapes of Wrath, to describe, okay, so this is how God works. God takes a human army, and then he uses that human army to, bring forth that wrath against his enemies who are oppressing people, who are oppressing the weak, the vulnerable, the antebellum slavery system. So that's what that hymn is about.
That sounds like more of an idealist view there.
It kind of, it kind of does. So then you get to Steinbeck. What's he doing? So what he's doing is, he writes after the Great Depression, and there's all these families and farmers and people moving to California to do this farming for dirt cheap because they can hire laborers for nothing. It's during the Dust Bowl. Nobody has any money. People are taking their families, and it's just an awful description of the 1930s and what these families had to go through just to make a couple pennies. It is devastating. And so Steinbeck was saying that what was happening in the 30s was a different kind of oppression, a different kind of, social injustice, if you will, that was occurring because of the upper class forcing the lower class to, work for nothing. And so he saw a different kind of grapes of wrath, like this stored up angst, this stored up, feelings of being oppressed in that part of our nation's history. And so that's why he titled his book The Grapes of Wrath, to advocate for the organization of, labor unions and labor organizations to prevent the kind of oppression that was happening in like the orchard fields and that kind of thing. So different hardship, different time period, but the same basic principle that God is on the side of those who are being oppressed, and he will bring justice against evil. And so we as Christians should care about suffering and injustice. I think you and Krista and Monique's show was great a couple of weeks ago when you guys talked about that.
Yeah, go check it out.
It's a great.
Let's put a link in the show here, Tim.
Consider it linked.
More views.
I know their book just came out. I don't know if you read it yet.
I haven't. I haven't read it yet. It's called Walking in Unity, and they're trying to give a corrective to have a more biblical view of what justice looks like than what we hear in the popular media.
Right. And so I think that's important for Christians to care about suffering. And then when we think about the book of Revelation, which talks about the end times judgment, of course we should care about the ultimate suffering of an eternity apart from the mercy of God and the forgiveness of God. So, I think that's more what Revelation 14 and 15 is talking about, the ultimate wrath of God that's coming upon all evil and injustice. Is a big theme in the Old Testament prophets. In the book of Isaiah, we talked a lot about injustice when we were studying that with Tim Mackey. But anyway, that's where the sermon title came from, The Grapes of Wrath. So
that's good.
I thought that was helpful to.
By the way, have you ever been to the California part of California where John Steinbeck grew up? No, you should go someday.
I've never been to California.
Okay, well, if you
I need to
go to Monterey because that's where he was from.
Conferences or something.
We can. I'll have to see what's available.
Let's find an excuse.
But Monterey is like right on the water, and it's got a great aquarium. So definitely have to go to the Monterey Aquarium.
All right.
And then
Tim, you're in.
He was part of the Salinas,
yes,
like the inland, the Dust Bowl area. That's where he was writing about.
I'm ready.
Wrath.
I've always wanted to see the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. So
I love aquariums.
All right. Well, we gotta find a conference.
I've been to Ernest Hemingway's home.
Okay.
Where's that?
That's in Key West, Florida. There's a lot of cats.
Okay.
But that's a story for another time.
Was he a cat man?
He was a cat man. And all right, quickly, Ernest Hemingway had a lot of cats, and the property is all walled in, so the cats have nowhere to go. So the cats over the years have just bred with one another. So I think there's like 200 something cats on the property, and they just roam around his house. It's quite something.
Wow.
Good. Well, thank you. All right, Dave.
You're welcome.
30-second takeaway from the sermon, and then we're going to move on to the sprint and the announcements because we're getting longer on time here.
Okay. Here's something that I think we should take away. There was a central part of the sermon that was an incredible blessing, and I don't want us to forget that. There's a lot of blood and wrath and all kinds of stuff that's important for us to know about, but there was a blessing, a beatitude that was given upon the saints of God who even may give their lives for the faith, and it was, blessed are those who die in the Lord. I think that we need to receive that. There's 7 blessings in the book of Revelation. Like everything else, there's 7 of everything. So I'll just read those real quick. The first one is in the beginning. Blessed is the one who reads the words of this prophecy. Number 2, blessed is those who die in the Lord. Number 3, blessed are those who stay away from, and you're going to talk about that next week. What do we stay away from? I'll leave that as a cliffhanger. Number 4, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. That's chapter 19. Chapter 20, blessed are those who share in the first resurrection. Number 6, chapter 22, blessed is the one who keeps the words of this book. And then finally, number 7, blessed are those who wash their robes. That's in chapter 22. So 7 beatitudes, 7 blessings. Don't miss the blessing of chapter 14. Blessed are those who die in the Lord. That's an incredible source of comfort for those of us who know Christ and who maybe even have lost loved ones. We know that they are safe and secure with our Lord.
Well, good word, Pastor Dave. Thank you so much for unpacking that. This next week, we're talking about the bowl, not the grapes of wrath, but the bowls of wrath. So we'll talk a little bit about God's forbearance, which his patience is going to come to an end, and there will be a final justice and judgment on the wicked who refuse to repent. So we will talk about that a bit this week. Okay, so now we're on the Theology Sprint. Do you have a question, Tim?
I do. No
Okay.
Noah this week, so I have one. So we hear a lot the term or the phrase that Jesus was fully God and fully man. Try to explain that a little bit, and then what does that mean for us as Christians in terms of salvation?
I mean, this
All right.
in terms of theological triage, this is like top tier.
This is top tier.
Yeah.
I went first last week. You go first this week.
Okay, so Jesus has to be affirmed in both of his deity and his humanity for a couple of different reasons. We see in the Gospels that he grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. We see that he was born as a baby and then developed just as a human. And then in Hebrews, it says that he was tempted in all the ways that we're tempted, yet he was without sin. And so because of that, he can be our sympathetic high priest. Because of that, he can be our representative. Jesus was also God, in that he had a fully divine nature. He's one with God. He says, I and the Father are one. He says things like, before Abraham was, I am. John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. Plenty of times in the Gospels, Jesus is receiving worship that only God should receive. Jesus has attributes that only God has. And so we have to affirm both his humanity and his deity. The reason that's important is because, number one, that's who he is. That's what the Bible teaches. But number two, in order for salvation to be possible, we realize that we've sinned against a holy God and that our punishment for sin was an infinite punishment. So although humanity is the species that should pay for the sin of humanity, really a human being cannot pay that infinite payment. So because mankind should pay and because only God could pay, there became a need for God to become man. So that's why that's important. That's why some of the earliest creeds in the early church have to deal with who is Jesus and how do we think about him. And they use a phrase that's called the hypostatic union, which is the union of substances between God and man found in our Lord Jesus Christ.
Wonderful explanation, Pastor Dave.
Did I do 60 seconds that time?
That was pretty close.
All right.
That was
There you go.
that was a true to form sprint.
I sprinted.
You sprint. Are you out of breath?
I feel like I'm swimming laps here.
Very good. Very
Full
good.
circle. What was the style of sermon that you were talking about?
That was freestyle.
Or no, I'm saying where you A B B A B C B A.
chiastic.
Yeah, back
Yeah.
to swimming laps. It's a chiastic podcast.
That's right. Yeah, we bracketed it with the swimming. Very good.
It is. Very much so. All right. Tim, we've come to the end, so let's do some announcements and then be on our way.
Indeed, an announcement sprint. Here we go.
All right, first announcements, the shuttle. There will be no shuttle this coming Sunday for those of you that are enjoying that ride to the Chabad. So no shuttle this Sunday. We'll be back after that. I did notice we had some pretty full services, so we definitely want to encourage you to take the shuttle, just not this week. Secondly, there's a women's event. Do you want to mention about this, Pastor Dave?
This is coming up Saturday, December 7th, 9 a.m. You do need to register for this. This is a special event where we behold Christ and remember the importance of Christmas. So, ladies, make sure that you sign up. It's going to be awesome. And it's a potluck brunch. Stay tuned for details about that.
Wonderful. And then last but not least, Contend Conference is coming up January 31st to February the 2nd. So
that's a weird date at the top.
I
there.
know. I'm not sure.
The date is wrong.
Let's
Listen
not
to
use
Bob.
that one.
The date is incorrect.
put
maybe
it-
we need to go.
I'll put a
find
new
the
graphic over
correcting-
this. So
correcting.
disregard everything I said. This is not the graphic you're actually
I
looking
believe
at.
there's a corrected graphic, so let's just go find the right one. So anyway, January 31st, February 2nd. Right now, if you're interested in volunteering, that's what we're looking for. So if you go to the registration page, register, and then also let us know if you can volunteer. We're looking for help in terms of greeting, the food area. Food's a big thing. We want to make sure people get fed. Resource area, registration. We need some help with that, and you help make this possible. We do think it's going to be a big turnout, so we need lots of volunteers for that. Or if you just want to attend, make sure you go and sign up. We're looking to sell this thing out before the end of the year. So we're about to send out a lot of promotion on the interwebs. So make sure you get your spot before it runs out. And that's coming up. It's going to be a great weekend. And that's all we have for you today. Pastor Dave, what a wonderul episode. Thank
It's a
you
great
so
show.
much for teaching us about the grapes of wrath. All right, as you go today, make sure you go and vote. We'll be debriefing that next week, and we do hope you have a wonderful week. We hope to see you this coming Sunday. God bless, and thanks for joining us for Behind the Pulpit.